What is good, gamers? Welcome back to the updated podcast. Today's date is March 21st, 2022. And once again, it's not been a very interesting week. I mean, we have a few things that are industry-wide that I would definitely like to talk about. And after that, there's a few bits and pieces. And so let's just get right into it. First off, which is the main thing that I wanted to talk about today, it'll probably take up quite a bit of the show, is that today, or no, not today. What am I on about? A few days ago, AMD revealed that their FSR is going to be a driver thing instead of a game-based thing in their latest graphics cards. So their RX 5000 series and their RX 6000 series, there's going to be a driver level version of Fidelity FX Super Resolution, which is FSR. If you don't know what that is, basically it renders the game, it forces the game to render in a lower resolution, and then it upscales it using AI technology to whatever resolution you have set. So like, I have a 1080p monitor. I can run my games in I think it's like 600 by 700 or whatever the setting is. And then it will upscale it using AI technology and make it essentially look like a 1080p image. It's pretty interesting tech, and it works. We see it with DLSS. We see it with FSR, of course. But now you'll just be able to hit, if you have those graphics cards, once again, the AMD's RX 5000 series cards or AMD's RX 6000 series cards, which is the last two generations of AMD's cards, you can literally just go into any game, hit Alt and R on your keyboard to pull up the in-game overlay. And as long as you have the software, of course, and the latest driver update, and you can just enable FSR, set your render, what you want it to render at, and then you're just chilling. You get a boost in performance. This tech is already in the Steam Deck. It's already on the driver level in the Steam Deck, so pretty much 90% of games on the Steam Deck, you can render at a lower quality and upscale it using FSR. Something like DLSS, which is essentially the same thing, only it's been worked on more. It's always been just an in-game thing, and it's always been just the RTX cards from NVIDIA. With FSR, we see AMD going, hey, we're just going to give this to everyone, pretty much. Not only do we have, of course, what I'm talking about right now, FSR on basically any graphics card in almost any game. Of course, sometimes you'll probably run into issues with certain games, but this should theoretically make most games compatible with FSR. You can already do it in some instances. You can mod certain Steam files to kind of enable FSR. It's a little weird. I don't want to get too much into that because I don't know much about that. I haven't tried it. But and then you also have what AMD initially did with the FSR and what they're doing at the FSR 2.0, which is what they, of course, also revealed. But we didn't really see too much of it. We saw like 2 minutes of in-game footage and a few still frames of stats. But basically, just about any graphics card within the last 8 years could use FSR, because it's not really using the graphics card side of things. It's more so using the software side of things. So you don't really need those RTX cards to use FSR like you would with DLSS, which are essentially the same thing. It's kind of weird though, because FSR 2.0 is already being released Q2 of this year, if I'm not mistaken, which is only a few months away. We're going to learn more in about 2 days when they have another conference. And yeah, so FSR has always, since it was first released, the original version, has always worked on so many different graphics cards. Like, I could have used it on my NVIDIA 1660 Super. Michaela could use it on her 1060 Ti. I mean, or what was her 1060 Ti. But yeah, it's interesting tech. It's really nice. And with the stuff that they revealed with FSR 2.0, which is a separate thing from the driver level stuff. The FSR 2.0 is going to be base FSR. So it's going to be built into games, certain games, as long as the developer puts it in there. And you'll just be able to enable it like an in-game graphics setting. And so in FSR 2.0, you cannot tell the difference. Every single picture that I've seen, you cannot tell the difference between the scaled versions and the native versions. And we're talking like double the FPS in terms of, like, they give an example of Deathloop with running at 4K with ray tracing. I'm assuming it's also max settings, so they don't specify. But at native 4K, it's getting 53 FPS with FSR 2.0 on performance mode, which basically means it runs at an even lower. It runs at basically the lowest possible where it can upscale, and then it upscales it to 4K. It's running at 101 FPS. That is nearly double, and I cannot tell the difference on my screen here. What I'm looking at, I do not see a difference. It might be different in person on an actual 4K monitor. I cannot tell you that. However, basically everything I've seen, and even in my experience with FSR, because I've used things like FSR and DLSS, there's almost no difference. It's insane. It's really sweet technology. I mean, of course, I have no idea how the hell they do it, but it's interesting. It works. It's great. And it's just going to be accessible to so many people, and it's going to be great. So they do claim that it has a better image quality than native 4K, which I'm going to call a cap on to an extent. Like, we'd have to test a lot of things, and sometimes image quality is so close that it comes down to subjective opinion, and I would rather not give that right now, considering I haven't seen it firsthand. So I'm not going to give my subjective opinion on that. I just think it's very questionable to be able to claim that. Like, it's possible, I suppose, but they're going to have to prove it. And from what I've seen, it there doesn't look like much of a difference. They look like the exact same image, which is still good. Still good by all means, but claiming it's better than native 4K, come on now. Calm down. That's basically it for that. Like I said, really interesting tech. I really hope the launch of it goes well when we learn when it's coming out. We don't know. All we know is Q2 2022 from what I know. And we will learn more in 2 days on March 23rd. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested in FSR 2.0, I guess. Next up, we have Elden Ring getting an update a few days ago. Actually, it was like 5 days ago, if I'm not mistaken. It got a pretty massive update, actually. Most of the super strong stuff got nerfed. We got the Hoarfrost Stomp, which is when the Ash of War, where you stomp on the ground and the ice spikes come out in like a cone in front of you. That got nerfed. It does a lot less damage from what I know. Haven't personally tested it before and after. Not too worried about it. It got nerfed. It was insanely strong. Speedrunners were using this Ash of War to like demolish bosses. And then on top of that, the Sword of Night and Flame got nerfed slightly, if I'm not mistaken. And we have a few other things. We got NPC. If you've met an NPC, they now have an icon on the map as to where they are. So like all the shopkeepers and stuff, you know exactly where they are, and you can just go on back to them. And there's also names of the NPCs next on graces that they're near. Really nice quality of life stuff. I definitely like seeing this. The icons are not very intrusive. Not as intrusive as the grace icons can be sometimes. But yeah, it just works. It seems like it's pretty good. So, and then on top of that, now we have a whole new jar NPC that I believe you can find somewhere in Limgrave. Not 100% sure where. I haven't done it yet. I haven't touched it. So he's a jar. I don't remember his name either, but he's a new NPC. And then on top of that, multiple NPC quests also got extended, and we got basically finished versions of these quests. And then on top of that, we got the a nerf to the Mimic Tier summon. So if you don't know what the Mimic Tier summon is, you get it later on in the game. It basically copies you and becomes you and just fights as you and uses your weapons, your shields, your Ashes of Wars, whatever you have equipped at the time when you summon it. And yeah, that got nerfed. I haven't really seen much of a difference. I think the health pool and got a little bit lessened, and I don't think it can heal itself anymore. It used to be able to use one Estus flask, but one healing flask, and I don't think it can anymore. So that's kind of a bummer. But I mean, there's always the other ashes, summoning ashes. If you think the Mimic Tier's bad now. Apparently there are ones that are technically quote unquote better than it now. I haven't tested them. I personally like the Twin Sage guy. I love the Twin Sage. He's so good. Every time I'm like struggling with a boss super hard, even with my Mimic Tier, I just summon the Twin Sage and he just goes ham instead of my Mimic Tier. It's great. Next up, we have Humble Bundle. They currently have a Stand With Ukraine bundle where 100% of the proceeds go to basically charities to support humanitarian aid in Ukraine, and which I'm not here to talk about. I'm just here to talk about the bundle because it is literally like $2,000 worth of stuff for like $40, I think, is the minimum donation in order to get them all. Of course, all of the games are on PC platforms, so Steam, Epic Games, GOG. I'm not sure if you can choose between the few platforms that they give away for every game. I know most of the time, some games you can redeem on Steam, some games you can redeem on Epic, some games you can choose between the two. That same thing with GOG, of course, but it's literally like tons of games, over $2,000 worth of games at retail price. It includes Metro Exodus, Back for Blood, Satisfactory, if you know what that is. I think it's like a factory building type thing and management thing. The Long Dark, which is a pretty interesting survival game. I never ended up beating it, I don't think, but it's pretty rough. It's very difficult. And then Fable Anniversary, PGA Golf 2K21, along with a Spyro game. It comes with tons upon tons of games. Literally, just look at Humble Bundle, the store, if you're interested in PC games, and go to their bundles category, and it's like right there, pretty much. It's the Stand With Ukraine bundle. There's 4 days left. There are so many games in this bundle. So many games, and you literally, the minimum is $40, and you get 123 items, not all of which are games. I think there's like 1 or 2 pieces of software in there, but other than that, it's a bunch of indie games on top of Max Payne 3, Sunset Overdrive, Spyro Reignited Trilogy, Quantum Break, tons upon tons of games. If you're into single player games and more indie games, I would definitely recommend it. I mean, it has Metro Exodus, which, of course, I think I even paid $60 for that game, if I'm not mistaken. That, or I got it on Game Pass. I can't remember. But it also has all 3 Amnesia games. It's a very good bundle. I mean, if you don't want to support the cause, that's on you. However, even though I have about half of these games, I will probably still ended up getting this bundle. Honestly, it's a lot of games, so yeah, just tons of games to play. Who doesn't love games, right? Alrighty, next up we have Hogwarts Legacy, the Harry Potter game that was revealed a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken, from WB Games. Is now officially coming out. Well, I guess not officially because delays happen, but it is coming out on PC, Switch, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, and the Xbox Series consoles in holiday 2022, so quarter 4. Yeah, it was announced in 2020, and it was supposed to come out last year, got delayed, blah, blah, blah. And it's supposed to be an open world thing, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know how customizable it would be. We have not seen too much of it. However, it is a Harry Potter game, so it'll probably be pretty sick in terms of like spells, moving stuff around with some puzzles and stuff. So yeah, so keep an eye on that. Holiday 2022, probably sometime mid-December, if I had to guess. And then next, this is absolutely tragic. I don't think Battlefield 2042 was this bad. If you don't know, Battlefield 2042 was abysmal at launch. And I mean, it still is. It's pretty much a dead in the water game. I wouldn't be surprised if they gave up on it pretty much, because yeah, it's just it's a mess. But Gran Turismo 7, the PlayStation's racing game, basically, and it had a 30-hour outage after an update. 30 hours. Now, this would be fine if there was a full offline play, but no. Most of the offline play, from everything that I have seen, there is next to no offline play. It's an always online game. 30 hours? And it took them over 24 hours to provide an update. That is absolutely unacceptable for any game developer. Any game developer, let alone a game developer backed by PlayStation with one of the biggest releases anticipated, one of the most anticipated releases of the year. Gran Turismo 7. Everyone on PlayStation loves Gran Turismo. Well, not everyone, of course, because if you don't like racing games, you don't like this. But anyways, 30 hours. And then on top of that, the update made the game more grindy. So you pay $70 for this game, and then you're forced to either play for tons of time to unlock cool stuff, kind of like how you would unlock a frame on a Warframe, or you're forced to pay another $70 for like one car. What? Hello? That is abysmal. Absolutely abysmal. Why? Why pay that? Why have microtransactions? It's so stupid. If you're gonna, it's not like the game is like a Game Pass game or something even. So it's not like it's a game that someone can get for free, and the game developers might not get as much money simply because, you know, it's just not in the budget or whatever, which I don't think really is the case, considering I don't think that's how like a Game Pass like service works. I believe it's more based on how many people play their game using the service, as well as an on the top deal of a certain amount of money, which is probably plenty. But it's not like this game is on like Game Pass or PS Now. It's not. It's not. Because that's not how PlayStation works. It's not on. It's just a $70 game because of the PlayStation price hikes. And then after that, you have to spend more money if you want to speed up your progress, because why not? If you don't want to spend, you know, billions, well, not billions, but a bunch of hours just to get something that's pretty cool. No, you got to spend money. You got to spend more money on top of the $70 you gave them. You can't just play for, you know, a few hours and get something cool. No, you have to play more than that. Why? That's the stupidest thing ever. And the Metacritic score went all the way down to 3.2 during the outage and after the update. That is crazy. That is a massive drop. It's now 2.0. The meta score from critics is 87. The user score is 2.0. Holy shit. That is abysmal. This game is fucked. Unless they completely reverse this game is fucked. So yeah, sick, right? It's probably going to get bought a lot. However, it still, from everything that I have seen, acts like it is a free-to-play game, like Warframe or something. But no, it's just, it looks great. Everything that I've seen looks great, and the customization looks great, but you can't really justify that with tons and tons of basically forcing your players to spend tons and tons of money. Granted, of course, microtransactions, you're not really forced to spend money, but you feel pressured into spending a lot of money because it's like, oh, hey, you want this cool thing? You can, play for this many hours because you only get this many coins per race or whatever, even if you're pretty much like, you do the best of all time. You only get this amount of coins. But no, you just got to do this race about 100 billion more times, and then you'll get something cool. Anyways, enough of that, because that's terrible, abysmal. I hate talking about that stuff. I hate talking about negative stuff. I love the positive stuff in gaming. Come on now. FSR 2.0, right, boys? Next up, we have the Resident Evil series that Netflix was reportedly working on. It now has a premiere date. It is a live-action TV show of Resident Evil, and it is going to be premiered on July 14th on Netflix. It honestly, all of the teaser art looks really cool. It almost reminds me of like Dexter teasers. It's like a vial of blood, or like a pill with blood around it and like a yellow background. It looks pretty cool, depending on which art you look at. But it's probably something that I'll watch. And once again, we are looking at, granted, Resident Evil does have movie series, and I don't know which one came first. However, once again, we are seeing video games essentially translating one way or another into the big screen, whether that's TV shows or movies, like, Uncharted just was and whatnot. So now we have Halo, Uncharted, we have so many different things being made into TV shows and movies. For some reason, my brain blanked. I can't think of any more. But yeah. I still don't really know how I feel about this trend. But although I will say most of everything that I have seen in terms of video game adaptations into movies or TV shows has been pretty positive. I honestly do not know how I will feel about the Halo show, specifically because the creators of the Halo show specifically said that they did not look at the games when making the show, which is a little bit of a weird thing to say. I feel like you should kind of take that into account, considering that's the largest medium Halo exists in. It has, books and whatever, but those are all, coming from the games, essentially. So that one's a little bit weird, and I guess we'll have to see when it comes out how I feel about that. But other than that, yeah, Resident Evil, the movies have always been action-packed, and granted, this is from completely different people, so I guess we'll see how this works out on July 14th. Let's go. And then a few Ubisoft news stuff. I still, of course, have very mixed feelings about Ubisoft. They have some shitty practices. However, I feel like the products they put out, for the most part, are half decent and end up being the games that I gravitate towards, like Far Cry 6 and Rainbow Six Extraction. I still play those every now and then and whatnot. And they announced Ubisoft Scalar, Scalar. A little bit of a weird spelling, weird word, but it is essentially a cloud native technology, quote unquote. That's a direct quote, that they will use to create, quote unquote, limitless open worlds. I don't know what any of that means. It's so vague. Who knows what they're on about? They said scalar means unprecedented scalability, flexibility, and creative freedom. Apparently, it also allows games to not have updates, essentially, because developers update single elements of games in real time without it affecting other aspects. So basically, it almost sounds like cloud gaming in a way, but just the world aspect of it, it seems a little weird. I'm unsure of what any of this means because they're very vague about what they're saying. So I'm not sure if this means they could essentially create infinite open worlds in a way. So maybe making a game like maybe if they had Skull and Bones in a way, like a third-person ship game, they could have like an endless open world where it not randomly generates, but it infinitely generates like land and like shops if it was like an actual open world RPG type game where you control a ship. However, that's not what it is, but just using that as an example, I'm unsure if that's what that means or if it means more of like they just can do better in terms of their open worlds. I will say their open worlds generally kind of suck a little bit. Like they generally feel like they're just kind of shoved into there as just to say that they're open world, and then they just shove random enemy encounters in there, which sometimes in some games I will say it works out. I will give them that. But certain games it does not, like Ghost Recon Breakpoint. I was never really able to get into that game too much. It seemed really, really empty, and like how you had to travel 6 billion miles to get anything done. Who knows what Ubisoft Scalar means? I kind of hope I can see the need kind of for updating things on the fly and gaming from the cloud, but it being necessary just for the aspect of, oh hey, no updates, that seems a little weird. I don't know how I feel about that, because high-speed internet isn't necessarily a common thing yet. Sure, you have where basically 95% of the United States has a decent, reliable speed. It's not necessarily cloud gaming speeds. Like, even I have some issues with cloud gaming depending on what service that I'm using. If I'm using something like xCloud, which is very optimized, it's great. However, if I'm using something like PlayStation Now, which is not so optimized, I do definitely have frame drops sometimes. And that's only when no one else is using my Wi-Fi. So yeah, I definitely don't think we're there in terms of internet speeds. So I don't know if that's what that means. Because if that's what that means, then this is going to be a little bit on the rougher side at first. I mean, granted, we're probably not going to see this actually implemented into anything for another probably 4 years, if I had to guess. But who the hell knows? They could come up with something within the next year. It's Ubisoft after all, So very weird. A little sus, not gonna lie. Dun 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 dun. Bow bow. Okay, let me not do that. Next up is Ubisoft's Roller Champions. If you don't know what that is, it's basically a Rocket League-esque game, only everyone is spinning around in a circle using rollerblades, and it's actual people, of course, not cars. And I honestly don't really understand how this game works. However, it looks very interesting and very competitive. So I'm probably going to try it. I believe it's free to play if I'm not mistaken. However, it's now targeting late spring for their launch date. So this game got delayed, I think, twice, pretty much. It's been pretty much in development hell, kind of like Skull and Bones has. It was supposed to come out early 2021, and then something happened, and then they were like, oh, hey, this is what's going on. And then we stopped hearing a little bit about it. But now we are looking at a late spring for launch. Definitely not necessarily an interesting piece of news, but I mean, it's a probably free-to-play game if I'm not mistaken, so seems very competitive. pretty on the interesting side. Like I said, like Rocket League. Rocket League, very hard game to master. If you've played Rocket League, you know that game is difficult and people can do some cool stuff on there. So I'm kind of hoping Roller Champions is something similar in a way. And then on top of the Resident Evil TV show, I actually forgot to rearrange the order of my topics. A Plague Tale Innocence. If you don't know what A Plague Tale Innocence is, it's a game from, probably in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, about a girl and her little brother in France during the plague, and they kind of have to survive, essentially. It's really story-driven. I did not beat it. I don't remember beating it. I remember playing it for like an hour, and it was pretty interesting. There were a few like rat powers or whatever, because, plague, rats, yeah. But apparently it is getting a TV show. So we have, it definitely has a good set, like it has a good story set in for it for a TV show, and a good atmosphere for a TV show. Who knows that they will actually succeed in that? We don't really have much in terms of details. All we know is that it is being worked on, essentially. Like I said, oh yeah, those are the games that I was forgetting. The Last of Us becoming a TV show or a movie, if I'm not mistaken, and then Twisted Metal getting its own TV show. So there's just so many things being turned into TV shows for video games, which, by the way, give us a new Twisted Metal game. I don't know who's listening to this. I don't know if you work with the Twisted Metal team, the old Twisted Metal team. Make another goddamn game. I miss the Twisted Metal games. So it's such good games. Anyways, boys, that is it for today. We're actually pretty decent on the recording. I thought this was going to be a shorter episode. I think I rambled on a little bit too much on certain things, but I digress. So thank you so much for listening. Don't forget, whatever platform you're listening on, rate the show, whatever you think it is worth. I mean, I am pretty much consistently working to improve the show. I want to get an intro for the show at some point, and I also want to add visuals to the YouTube channel. If you don't know, there is a YouTube channel for the podcast. I don't have a custom link for it, so it's not like I can tell you, oh, hey, youtube.com/whatever. But it is on there. I will probably have it in the description of whatever platform you're listening on. And of course, we have other platforms, Spotify, Apple Music. So if you're listening onto a platform you don't normally listen to on, chances are the podcast is on a platform that you like more. So definitely check it out on any platform that you like. I would like to say thank you for listening. And if you're listening to it on Spotify, there will be a Q&A down there. If you have suggestions for the podcast, if you want us to cover something specific, leave a comment if you can, or answer that Q&A on Spotify. So yeah, thank you very much. And I will see you boys next week. Stay frosty, boys and girls, I guess.